All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be doing solving quadratic equations. Okay, that's our goals for today. And to do that, you'll see right here that it says we're going to use the factoring technique. Yes, sir. So we got to be able to factor. Teach me how to factor. Teach me how to factor. So we got to factor. We're going to look for factors of f and L that add up to our OI. So a little review. So factors of d squared we know are d and d. What are factors of 121 that add up to 22? Jet, what do you got, bud?
11.
Plus 11. Okay, and we can double check those, right? 11 times 11 is 121. And then check your smile and nose, your OI check, OI. Check your OI, outers and inners. That's 11D. Inners, that's 11D. Yes, that's 22D. Again, that's the smile and nose of SpongeBob. You guys see SpongeBob there, right? Eyes and the nose. Check the nose and the mouth. Done. Any questions? Who got that one right? Raise your hand. Yes. All right. So if you didn't get it right, hopefully we see what we did. Okay. Now, on the test, we said if you want it right, make sure you write it as a quantity squared, right? So hopefully we did that yesterday on our test. Okay. All right. Example 2, I got 6m squared minus 13m, and then minus 5. All right, so again, looking for factors of f and L. We got to add up to that OI term. All right, now factors of 6m squared could be 6m and m, or 2 and 3, so 3 and 2, 3m and 2m. I usually try those first, the ones that are close together. I don't know if that's going to work. Is that going to work? Because now we got to look for factors of negative 5, and I have to add up to negative 13. So factors of a negative, one's a plus and one's a minus, one's a minus, one's a plus. And factors of 5, 1 and 5, 5 and 1. What's going to work here, gang? Who's got them? Or maybe 3 and 2 doesn't work. We'd have to try 6 and 1. Did anybody get this one? Kai? 3m minus what? 5. Minus 5. And 2m plus 1. Okay. Can we check our outers and inners? I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see. This gives me 3m. This gives me negative 10m. Ooh, that's negative 7m. So it's a good thing we checked. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. It's the other way around. So we checked it.
2m minus 5.
So 3m plus 1 and 2m minus 5. Is that what I heard? Okay. Check it. That's negative 15m. That's 2m. Yes. So that's negative 13m. And guys, that's why we guess and check, just to make sure it works out. Because again, if you're guessing, well, chances are you might be wrong. So we got to check it. So good job, Kai. Good job, Colton, on getting those. Okay. So final answer, I get 3m plus 1, 2m minus 5. Those guys didn't work. So unfortunately, if you had 3m minus 5 and 2m plus 1, unfortunately, it didn't work. All right, last but not least, we have x squared minus 225. OMG. So here's the idea, guys. This is f, there's an L. Where's the OI? You got no OI. You got no OI. No, let me spell OI right. OI. You got no OI. It's just like 0x. So when I do factors of f and L, and if there's no OI, they have to be the same numbers, but one's going to be a plus and one's going to be a minus because they cancel out. Hopefully. Factors of x squared are x and x. What are factors of negative 225 that are exactly the same? Lauren. Plus 15 and minus 15 multiplied together is negative 225. And when I do my outers and inners, yes, ma'am, that's negative 15x, and inners 15x. That is 0x. That is the no OI that we're looking for. So final answer, There we go. Again, if you're online and you can't hear me, let me know. Any questions with factoring? Just basic idea what we did. We don't write that as a quantity squared because they're different, right? One's an x plus 1, or excuse me, one's an x plus 15 and one's an x minus 15. Okay. Now I see these little things in your ears, guys. Take them out. You guys can't focus here. Take those things out. So that's what we learned in chapter 8. Let's go ahead and learn what we need to know for chapter 9 for. Okay. So why do we learn to factor polynomials? It's in order to solve equations like what we have here. Okay. We can solve what's called a quadratic. A quadratic means it has an x squared term. So you'll hear me say quadratic now, where there's an x squared. So if you see an x squared, that's called a quadratic equation. Okay? And we can solve these quadratic equations by factoring and use this, what we call the zero product property. The zero product property states that if you have some numbers a and b, and if a times b is 0, then either a has to be 0 or b has to be 0, right? So what's 0 times anything, guys? 0. So if you have a product, two things multiplied together, two unknowns, a and b, and it equals 0, well, that means either a has to be 0 or b has to be 0. So that's what this states. If I have two unknowns, a and b multiplied together, and it equals 0, well, then a has to be 0 or b's got to be 0. Okay. So in order to solve this equation by factoring, we can follow these two steps. First off, set the equation equal to 0. I always say, get your stuff equal to 0. And then we factor. And then we use the zero product property, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So I'll explain that as we go. Okay. You guys see this okay? It's kind of dark. Let me zoom in so we can see real good. All right, so here's the first one, guys. So solve each equation. Now, the nice thing is this one is set equal to 0, right? I have this guy and this guy have already been factored. So for me to solve something like this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy now, x plus 1, and set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to solve it. Okay, how do I solve x plus 1 equals 0? Well, subtract 1. And we get x equals -1. That's easy. Then I do the next one. I take x minus 5, and I set that equal to 0, and I solve that guy. Well, how do you solve x minus 5 equal to 0? Add the 5 over. And now we get x equals 5. Now take a look at that. You guys see a shortcut here. You see the answer is x plus 1 and you get -1. And you see x minus 5 and the answer is plus 5. Any idea how to do the shortcut? Because when I do it, I go from something like this right to this step. I don't show this work. Number one, I can do that in my head because I'm a mathematician. Number two, Colton, just change the signs. I always say your answers are going to be opposite of what you see in parentheses. So if you see x plus 1, the answer is -1. If you see x minus 5, the answer is +5 or just 5. Okay, and here's the why. When I plug in -1 here, -1 plus 1 is, what's -1 plus 1? 0, and what's 0 times anything? 0. If I plug in 5 here, what's 5 minus 5? 0, and what's 0 times anything? 0. Okay, so that's why that works out. Okay. Now, sometimes, when I look at example 5 here for today, sometimes it makes it look a little harder. When we set this up, 7x minus 2, the answer is not +2 because if I set 7x minus 2 equal to 0, there's a couple more steps I got to do. The first step is add this 2 over. there's still one more step. Jet, do you know what the next step is?
Divide 7.
Divide by 7. And we get 2 over 7. So final answer is 2/7. Okay, now, yes, it is opposite sign, so it did start as a negative here. It becomes a positive 2. But the number in front is your divisor. It's your denominator for your answer. Okay. So some of you guys are really good and you can go right in your head. I usually do. But some people can't, and that's okay. Just take 5x plus 4 and set it equal to 0. And then it's just basic linear algebra that we learned in first semester. Move this guy over using subtraction. And we get 5x equals negative 4. Am I done? What's my last step? Divide by 5. And I get negative 4/5. Okay. Again, I can always check my work if I so choose. I can plug in negative 4/5 in here. If I take 5 times negative 4/5, the 5's cancel, leaving me with negative 4. And then negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So it works out. 0 times anything is 0. So I get my 2 answers there. Now, do I need to see this work? I would start showing some of this work. But just so you know, when I do this on my own, okay, I go from this step right to this step because I know it's opposite of what I see in parentheses. And if there's a number in front, that's my denominator because that's what I divided over by. Okay. There's nothing wrong with showing work though. But if you're not very good at solving linear equations by hand, which you guys are just learning algebra, then show the work, guys. Okay. All right. Any questions? So now when we look at 6 and 7, now we make it a little tougher. Now on number 6, we're trying to make it look like we had on example 4, where we had our two quantities equal to 0. Okay, so we must factor. Again, just like we did, we want factors of f and l, and they have to add up to OI. Okay, so let's go ahead and factor this thing. So now we're working on that scale we just got tested on yesterday. Factors of x squared. What are factors of x squared? X and x. And then who's got factors of negative 14? One's a plus, one's a minus, so that when you add them together, you guys will get negative 5. So 1 and 14, 2 and 7, what works? Damien, you got them? 2 and 7. Who's positive and who's negative? It's got to add up to a negative 5x. The big guy or the little guy? The big guy's got to be negative. So the 7's got to be negative. And the 2's got to be positive. So again, factors of 14 are 1 and 14. You could try 1 and 14. Those aren't going to work. But 2 and 7 does. If you put the 2 as negative and the 7 positive, you'll get 5x. When I check my OA, that's negative 7x. That's 2x. Yes. That's negative 5x. So now I know I factored it right. And now the new step, guys, is to take each one and solve it. Set equal to 0. So take x plus 2, set equal to 0. Okay. And what do you guys get? X equals negative 2. And then we can do it for this one here. Take x minus 7, set it equal to 0, and you get x equals 7. Okay. I always remember opposite of what I see in parentheses. So if you go from this step to this step, I'm okay with that. You don't need to do the work in that case. Okay. Now, on homework tonight, which is a worksheet, if you just have the question and then your answers with no work shown, no factoring, then we have some issues, right? Then you're just looking online and checking the answers online, which, by the way, the answers are online, but no work is shown. So the answers will be like negative 2 and 7 is the answers. And now I got to see a little factoring at least to see how you did that. All right, let's take a look at number 7. Number 7, I have 2n squared minus 15n plus 18 equals 0. So I got my stuff equal to 0. And I look to factor my outsides to see if it adds up to my insides. To factor the f and the l to add up to my oi. Oi. All right, well, factors of 2n squared is pretty easy, right? What's factors of 2n squared? 2n and n. So factors of 2n squared are 2n and n. Everybody okay with that? Again, I don't see a GCF there. Now, factors of 18, OMG. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. 3 and 6. And factors of 18 that add up to a negative, both have to be what? Negative. Both have to be negative. These are, so 2n minus something and n minus something. Well, my outers and inners have to give me negative 15n. Okay. All right. Should 18 go here? What's 2 times 18? A lot. Yeah, bigger than negative 15. It's what, 36? Too much. So you're saying 3 and 6? Again, Colton says it's factors down to 3 and 6. I don't know if that's right, so the only way to check is to do the smile and nose of SpongeBob. So some of you guys on the test yesterday were just throwing in factors, but I didn't see any checking. It's hard for me to give you any credit. 2n times negative 6 is negative 12. Negative 3 times n is negative 3n. Yes. So Colton factored it right. Are we done? No. But it's pretty easy to finish up. Take each quantity and set equal to 0 and solve. Again, these are tougher because there's a number in front. Okay. Add the 3 over. 2n is equal to 3. Divide it. N equals 3/2. If you give me the decimal, that's okay. I prefer fractions reduced. Okay. And if you need to, set n minus 6 equal to 0. But I always remember opposite of what you see in parentheses, so I would just make that n equals 6. Again, you can add the 6 over if you need to show the work. Okay, so final answers, I get 3/2 and 6. Okay. Any questions, y'all? All right. Got a couple more I want to do. Yes, sir. Got a few more here. OMG. People, even pre-calc kids see this one and they freak out. You guys are algebra kids, so let's make sure we got this one. Pre-calc kids. My pre-calc kids see this one, they're like, "Duh, I don't know what to do, Mr. Gotsch." All right, and those guys are juniors and seniors. You guys are freshmen. C squared minus 5c equals 0. We need to, number 1, have our stuff equal to 0, so we got that. Number 2, we need a factor. How do you factor something like this? C squared minus 5c. Any ideas how to factor this thing? Lauren says no. Kel? No, good guess. But we do want 0. We always want it equal to 0, so we want to keep it that way. Okay, so good guess. Damien?
I don't know if I'm right, but then we divide by 5.
What's that?
Divide by 5.
Divide by 5? No, good guess. Add? No, don't add anything. It's all set up, ready to go. Yes. Divide by C? Kind of. Kind of. Do you guys remember the first rule of factoring? What is it, Gail? Yes, sir. Look for what they have in common. And what do they have in common? G, C, F. First rule of factoring, don't talk about factoring. Second rule, don't talk, no. The real rule is look for a GCF. And they have a C in common, right? So we can take a C out. Hurry, because you're missing the good stuff. And now I'm left with C minus what? 5. So that if I was to do the distributor property, C times C is C squared. And C times negative 5 is negative 5C. Okay? Now again, I set each thing equal to 0. Even this guy. Set C equal to 0 and solve. Well, guess what? It's solved already. C is equal to 0. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't 0 squared minus 5 times 0, 0? Isn't 0 minus 0, 0? Right? That makes sense, right? Right? Right. Take this guy. C minus 5 equals 0. Add the 5 over. We get C is 5. So I get two answers. I get 0 and 5. Final answer. Okay, again, for whatever reason, GCF always scares people, but that's the first thing you're always looking for. See if there's a GCF. In this case, if I read it out loud, C squared minus 5C, I said C twice. Take a C out. Okay, final answer, 0 and 5. Any questions? Griff, you're all right, bud? All right, let's take a look at number 9. I got P squared minus 4P equals 21. Anytime we are solving by factoring, you must get your stuff equal to 0. Do you see a 0? No. So that means I got to move this guy over there. How do I move that guy over? Yeah, subtract it over. Now, these are all unlike terms, guys. So I got to leave them separate. It's P squared minus 4P minus 21 equals 0. You want to write this thing in descending order so the power of P gets smaller and smaller. So P squared, P to the first, and no P. So I have my nice pretty trinomial equal to 0. Always want your stuff equal to 0. Always, always, always if you're going to factor. Common mistake is people will see this and they'll try to take out a P right away. Can't do that. Doesn't work. Okay, you want to get your stuff equal to 0 so we can factor. All right, teach me how to factor. Teach me how to factor. F, L, check your OI. That's your OI term. Factors of P squared, P and P. What are factors of negative 21 that add up to negative 4? One's a plus and one's a minus. Who's positive? Who's negative? Who's got it? Right. 7 and 3. Who's positive? Who's negative? All right, it's got to add up to a negative. So the big guy is negative, and the little guy, 3, is positive. So again, negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. Still want to check your outers and inners. Negative 7P, inners 3P, yes, negative 4P. So it checks out. Let me get it so you can see it. I'm zoomed in just a touch too much. Okay. All right, final answer. Guys, once I know I factored right, my final answer is just opposite of what I see. If I see P plus 3, my answer is negative 3, right? And if my answer for here is P minus 7, what's my answer? Yeah? If it's P minus 7 equals 0, P equals what? 7. It's opposite of what I see. Okay? Now, if you lost me there, well, off to the side, all I'm doing is P plus 3 equals 0, and P minus 7 equals 0. I'm subtracting 3 over, and that's how I'm getting p equals negative 3. I'm adding 7 over in my head. I get p is 7. Again, it's always opposite of what you see in parentheses. Okay, Damien, I have an answer.
So the word, you know how this is, like, the 3 is positive and then the 7 is negative, so when you answer it, does that mean the 7 turns positive and then the
Right. Yeah, so if you have p minus 7, the answer is positive 7 because 7 minus 7 here would be 0. And 0 times anything is 0. Just like here, p plus 3, the answer has to be negative 3 because when I add them together, I want them to be 0. So negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Yeah. Okay. So again, this light blue right here, you don't have to show this work, but you might, especially right now, you probably want to do it until you get the hang of it. All right. Last but not least, number 10. I do want to talk about 10 real quick because it's different than anything we've seen yet. Anytime you guys are solving by factoring, the first thing we have to do, not GCF yet. Yeah. So how do you do that? Yes. So what Colton's saying is you always want your stuff equal to 0. If you don't see equal 0, you're not ready yet to factor. Don't factor yet until you get your stuff equal to 0. So Colton said add 42x over. Okay. Now these are all different. These all have, yes, they all have x's, GCF, but they're all different exponents. So these are unlike terms. Okay. Yes.
Can you not just take an x out of each one?
Right. So if you see that they all have x's, that's the first step of factoring. Look for GCF. So Noah's saying, hey, take an x out. So if I take an x out of every single one, that turns this into an x squared plus a 13x and then plus 42. So good job, Noah. Okay. So again, that was GCF. All right, keep going. Keep going. I got to factor this guy. We already have an x out. But cover up this x right now, and hey, let's just factor this trinomial. Factors of x squared are x and x. What are factors of 42 that add up to your OA term, which is 13x? Kev? 6 and 7. Factors of a positive add to a positive are positive and positive. And then 6 and 7 are 7 and 6, right? You could try 1 and 42. That doesn't work. You could try 2 and 21. That doesn't work. You could try so many. That doesn't work. But 6 and 7 does. Yes, sir.
What happens when the factors of the last can't make the OA term?
Then either you're not factoring it right, or the rest of it would be unfactorable. So then you would just set whatever you have factored out already equal to 0. Okay, but most likely they will factor. Okay. Good question. Well, now, guys, we have 3 things that we need to set equal to 0. We need to set this guy equal to 0. We need to set x plus 6 equal to 0. And we need to set x plus 7 equal to 0. There are 3 answers here. Okay. So I set all 3 equal to 0. This one's already solved, right? This one is opposite of what I see. So if you already have x equals negative 7, awesome. You don't have to show that work. And same with this one, opposite of what I see. That's negative 7. So I get 3 answers, 0, negative 6, and negative 7. If you want to list them out as in a line, so if you want to list them out like this works too. Like that, I would accept that. Or if you want to do each one individually, that works too. Okay. All right. Now, what you'll notice, guys, as we're doing this, this is what we call degree 3. You guys remember largest exponent? degree 3. You guys remember that? You could find up to 3 answers. Okay? This is what we call a cubic function. There's up to 3 answers. And eventually, when you guys start exploring what these things look like, you would see this is actually where it crosses the x-axis. Okay? When you start looking at something like this is again a quadratic. You'll see this is degree 2, and you could find up to 2 answers. Sometimes there's only 1 answer. Sometimes there's no answers. So it's 2, 1, or none. But you can find, that's the maximum amount of answers is the degree. So most of the time, though, you'll find 2 answers for a quadratic, degree 2. And a lot of the times, degree 3, you will find 3 answers for those guys. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys take a look, homework is listed right here.